Yo, what's up guys? My name is Ricecooker and this is part 1 of how to get good at Nightfire. I decided to make this video because pretty much whenever I play I get asked one of the following 3 questions. How do you aim so well? How do you P-jump so well? And do you cheat? Well, I don't cheat, but I am pretty good at aiming and P-jumping. So in part 1 here I'm going to be primarily discussing how to aim, but I'm also going to be talking about a lot of other useful tips and tricks that you guys are going to need to use if you want to play this game at a high level. And in part 2, I'm going to just be talking about how to P-jump with and without your grapple. I know this video is kind of long, but everything I'm going to be talking about is really important, so I encourage you guys to watch the whole thing. If you have any questions or anything like that, just leave a comment or PM me or harass me in game or whatever you want. And yeah, be sure to subscribe so you know when part 2's out. Enjoy. Alright guys, so before we even go in game and I show you guys how to aim and that stuff, we're first going to have to talk a bit about just some settings and stuff that you might have to change to your game before you even start playing that's going to allow you to play it, better and properly. So let's start off here with just enabling the console. And there's a picture on the screen of how to do it. You're going to right click your Nightfire shortcut, whether that be on the desktop or, wherever you have it. And you're going to want to write plus console 1 exactly as it's shown in the picture. And that's going to enable the console, which I'm going to be talking about in a few seconds here. So once you've got your console enabled, you're going to want to open up your game and just join a random server or make your own server. To open the console, you're going to press the tilde key, which is just the squiggly thing next to the 1 on your keyboard. And in the console, you're going to want to type these 3 things, and I'll put them up on the screen there. CL CMD rate 101, CL update rate 101, and rate 25,000. These 3 settings are what's known as your rates, and what they're going to do is they're just going to make your game run a lot smoother, and they're also going to make your opponent's movement on screen a lot smoother as well. The next thing you're going to want to do is just play with your mouse sensitivity a bit, and to do that you're going to want to type sensitivity in console, and it'll display what it is, and to change it, just change the number. A higher number be for a faster mouse sensitivity, and a lower number will be for a lower mouse sensitivity. And if you already have a sensitivity that you're happy with, don't bother doing this, but I would just recommend experimenting with different sensitivities to find, what you're good with. Maybe some players might be able to aim better with a higher sensitivity, others might use a lower one. Me personally, I use a sensitivity that's pretty, average, in the middle. My normal sensitivity is 2. My zoom sensitivity ratio, which is for scopes with the sniper and commando, is 1.2. Next, I just wanted to quickly talk about mods and patches. In terms of mods, you pretty much have 2 types. There's good mods and bad mods. A good mod is a mod that's going to change the appearance of your game, but it's not going to give you an advantage over anyone. For example, a mod like a gun mod that just changes the appearance of your weapon. So if you wanted to change your Raptor to look like a Deagle from Counter-Strike or whatever, that's all good. The type of mods you want to avoid using are the bad mods. These mods are not only going to change the appearance of your game, but they're going to make it so that you have a clear advantage over your opponents. The most common type of bad mod used by Nightfire players these days is colored player models as well as colored grapple hooks. Using colored models is going to allow you to see other players a lot easier than if you were just playing the game normally and properly. So I definitely recommend avoiding using these or any other bad mods that give you a cheap and unfair advantage over your opponents. In terms of patches, there's a few different ones out there, from community-made patches to the Nightfire 1.1 patch. I'd recommend just sticking with the original 1.0 patch that comes with the game. I've used it for my 7 years of playing, and I've never had any problems with it whatsoever. The next thing you're going to want to do is type netgraph1 in your console. That's going to display a bunch of different stuff, but for our purposes the only important number is the FPS number, or frames per second. You want that FPS number to be locked at 100. If it's anything less than 100, your game's going to be really choppy and a lot harder to play. So if your FPS isn't at 100, there's a bunch of different stuff I'm going to show you guys how to do that's going to hopefully make it stay at 100. The first thing to do is to just open up your console again and type FPS_max 101. And that's just going to ensure that your game isn't limiting your FPS, and that if you can't get 100 FPS, you will be able to. If that doesn't work, the next thing you want to try is to close or minimize your game. Go to Start, Control Panel, and find your video card settings. In your video card settings, you're going to want to find VSync or vertical sync, and you're just going to want to turn that off. If that's turned on, it's going to be also limiting your FPS. And I'll put a screenshot up there about how to do that with an NVIDIA video card. There's a bunch of different video card brands out there, so yours might be slightly different. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, I am on Windows 7. I just like that old school Windows 98 layout, you know. If that doesn't work, you want to open up your game again, go to your in-game video options. You're going to want to change your texture quality, your texture resolution, model quality, and effects quality to the lowest possible settings. You're also going to want to lower your screen resolution. Something like 8x6 is a good resolution to use. This is just a picture of my normal settings that I use when I play. So if none of this stuff works, chances are you just have a really old computer with a bad video card. So the only thing to really do at this point would be to buy a new, better video card that's going to allow you to get 100 FPS easily. Video cards can be a bit expensive, but it's definitely worth the investment in my opinion, as it's not only going to make Nightfire run a lot smoother, but any other games that you play as well are going to run much better. Another piece of hardware that I'd recommend picking up if you don't already have one would be a headset. By playing with the headset, it's going to allow you to hear stuff a lot easier than with just normal speakers. Something like footsteps, for example, by using a headset, you're going to be able to hear those a lot better, and those are really important for, when you're trying to figure out where your opponent's at and all that stuff. If you can't get a headset right now, even using something like iPod headphones, they're not ideal, but they're still way better than speakers. Next up, I'm going to talk a bit about ping or latency. So when you join a server, the first thing that you always want to do is you want to press tab to get the scoreboard up. You want to take a look at the number in the latency column. That number is really significant because whatever it is actually going to determine, where you're aiming. These clips right now are of me playing with about 200 ping. They're old clips, so I apologize if the quality isn't as good. The thing that you'll notice about these clips is how far ahead of the target that I'm actually having to aim because of my high ping. As you can tell by this diagram, the higher your ping is, the further ahead of the model you're going to have to aim in order to hit. Between 0 and 50 ping, you pretty much just aim at the person. Between 50 and 100, which is the ping I get in most of the servers that I play on, you have to aim slightly ahead. Once you get up over 100 ping, it becomes a lot more difficult because, as you can see, you obviously have to aim well ahead of the target. Because of this, high ping in Nightfire really sucks. If you're playing with 200 ping and your opponent has, like, say 50, they're going to have a huge advantage over you just because of the ping factor. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can really do that's going to reduce your ping. You can close background programs that are using the internet, but the biggest reason why you have high ping is just because you live far away from the server host, and there's nothing you can really do about that. Except move. Okay guys, so I'm here in game, and I'm going to be starting the aiming portion of the video. So the first aiming technique that I'm going to be talking about here is something I call general pre-aiming. And general pre-aiming pretty much just deals with the way you walk around the map and your placement of the crosshair while you're doing so. So I'm going to show you guys how not to do it first. So this is how not to do it, okay? So when I see new players play, they pretty much just walk around aimlessly, pun intended. They just aren't really looking at anything in particular. They're kind of looking at walls, looking at the floor. Just not really paying attention really, or it doesn't look like they are. So this is something you don't want to do. So now I'm going to show you guys how to pre-aim properly. So when you walk around the map, you want to position your crosshair at head level, and you want to be checking all the different spots that a person could appear from or could be hiding. So when you go around corners, make sure you're always looking like the direction that you're going, not just like staring at the floor like this. Like, I don't know what it is with noobs and looking at the floor. No one's going to like David Blaine out of the ground and shoot your face off. If someone's going to appear, they're going to appear, here. So you're just at head level, you're ready to shoot them, right? One last thing with general pre-aiming. When you're walking around a corner, you don't want to walk around a corner with just using W in your mouse. So you don't want to do this. That's not good because you're not really like looking at anything in particular, and it's just slower that you're going to see people. What you want to do is you want to peek corners with your A and D keys, which is known as strafe peeking. So this way is a lot more effective because you can slide out quicker and just check a bunch of different stuff, which you're not going to be able to see when you just turn with your W and your mouse. So that's about it for general pre-aiming. It's pretty simple. It's probably one of the simplest things I'm going to be talking about, but it's also really important, so don't overlook it and make sure you do it every time you play. Next aiming technique I'm going to be talking about is called situational based pre-aiming. So situational based pre-aiming is also going to deal with the placement of your crosshair, but there's two key differences between that and general pre-aiming. So in situational based pre-aiming, you're going to most likely be fighting someone already, or you're going to be anticipating a fight with someone, whereas general pre-aiming, you're not, you're just kind of walking around the map. And as the name suggests, the other difference is different situations are going to call for different positioning of your crosshair pretty much. So I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So let's say you're in this area here, and you're fighting a dude that's in this area here. So what you want to do is, in this situation, you want to position your crosshair around here, because you're anticipating that the dude here is going to strafe out this way, and he's just going to strafe, right into your crosshair if you hold it here, right? As opposed to if you hold it here, that's not going to give you enough time to shoot him. Over here, that's just way too far. You're going to have way too much time. So by holding it here, as soon as he walks into it, all you got to do is click mouse 1 and you're going to hit him pretty much. So the most important thing with situational based pre-aiming is just positioning your crosshair in a way that your opponent's just going to walk into it, so it's going to make it really easy on you, because you're not even going to have to move your mouse that much. So let's say you're playing in this area here, and you're playing against an opponent or multiple opponents who can't P-jump. So you're going to want to position your crosshair right about here, so when they walk around this corner, all you're going to have to do is just click your mouse, and you're going to hit them. But if you're in a situation where you're playing against opponents who can P-jump, you don't want to be holding this angle here, because when they fly around this corner going really fast, that's not giving you enough time at all to hit them. So instead, you want to position your crosshair in this area here, so it'll give you plenty enough time to react, and again, you're just going to have to click your mouse, and you're going to hit them. So now I will show you guys some examples of me playing in a real live game situation where I'm using these techniques, this technique that I talked about. And none of the clips that you're going to see in any of these situations are staged or edited or anything. It's just me playing normally. The next aiming technique I'm going to be showing you guys is called pre-firing. And pre-firing is just pretty much just an extension of situational based pre-aiming. And pretty much all it is, you're going to be shooting at someone blindly. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's say that or you highly suspect there's a person just standing right here. So instead of just peeking out and waiting to see them before you shoot them, pre-firing is just essentially peeking really fast, then shooting them and then peeking back. So they're not even going to have a chance to react or shoot you, but, if they're there, you're going to hit them, obviously. So I'll give you guys a scenario of when it would be, good and effective to use the pre-fire. So let's say you're fighting a dude that's here, and, you hit him a bit, and he runs up these stairs. So obviously, in 90% of situations, he's going to be running to grab this armor here. So when you chase him, if you're just going to chase him and only if you're going to chase him and only, situationally pre-aim him, then you're just going to, peek here like that to be on the armor. But instead, what you might want to do is come up just pretty much firing blindly. So as you turn the corner, your bullets are going to be hitting him, and he's just going to have, no chance to really react or do anything. You're most likely going to get the kill there. So here's an example of pre-firing. Just wanted to talk quickly about what's known as a flick shot. So let's say you're fighting a dude here, and you feel yourself get shot by someone that's over in this area. A flick shot is just pretty much moving your mouse really quickly and trying to hit the dude that's shooting you from the side or from behind or, from wherever they're at. So obviously this, doesn't happen too often that you actually manage to pull one of these off. And, for obvious reasons, it's pretty difficult. It's most useful, I guess, if someone's shooting from behind at point blank, you just do a 180 and try and hit them. That can be useful, but it's really overall not that important in Nightfire. But yeah, here's an example anyways. So now I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to aim well in combat. And what I mean by that is just how to aim when you're in a firefight with someone and you're fighting someone, face to face. So pretty much there's two different styles that you're going to need to use when you're doing this. The first one is just waiting for your opponent to walk into your crosshair. The second one's going to be moving your crosshair onto your opponent to shoot them. And the key to having good aim is to know when and how to use both of these styles, because they each have their advantages and disadvantages. So let's start off first with waiting for your opponent to walk into your crosshair. So this method is very similar to pre-aiming. What I mean by that is you're not going to be moving your crosshair very much. You're going to more just be relying on your reactions, and you're going to be waiting for someone to move into it before you shoot them. And the main advantage about this type of aiming is that it's pretty easy, especially against people who have pretty simple movement or just strafe back and forth in front of you. But obviously the main disadvantage of this is you're not always going to have that ideal situation when someone's just, moving back and forth in front of you. People are going to be, jumping around and stuff, so you're going to have to sometimes move your crosshair in order to shoot them. So here's some examples of waiting, and just take note how, I have very little crosshair movement when I'm shooting these people, and how sometimes I wait the extra second or two and, take some damage, but I'm able to kill them just off of waiting for them to walk into my crosshair. The next aiming technique for aiming well in combat is moving your mouse onto someone as opposed to just waiting for them to walk into your crosshair. So, this is pretty self-explanatory. There's not too much more to say about this. I guess its biggest advantage would be that, you can kill people a lot faster with it, because, with waiting, obviously you have to wait, and with this you can, just move your mouse onto someone and shoot them. The biggest disadvantage, I guess, would be, it's a lot harder, obviously, and requires a bit more practice. So yeah, here are some examples. Okay guys, so now I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to deal with 2-on-1 situations, or situations where you're fighting multiple opponents. So you never really want to be in these situations. They're not ideal for you. Ideally you always want to fight people in a 1-on-1 situation. So the first tactic to use when you're in a 2-on-1 is something that I call isolation. So think about like one of those nature shows, when you got the herd of, hundreds of deer, and then you got the lion. So in order for the lion to get the kill, he's got to isolate, one of the deer and just focus on just killing him. So the same thing applies to Nightfire. Be the lion. So here's a scenario of what I mean by that. Let's say you're fighting a dude here, and then all of a sudden you feel yourself get shot by someone up here. So right now what you want to do is, instead of just staying here and fighting this person and getting shot by this person, you want to isolate one of these two. So just like the lion, you want to isolate the weaker player or the player that's closest to you. So in this case, pretty obvious choice would be to isolate the person up here. So you're going to run at this person and shoot them and bring the fight to this area here. So now that the fight is in this area, you're in a 1-on-1 with this guy, and you're going to have a lot better odds of killing him than if you're staying down here fighting in this 2-on-1 situation. So again, once you're here, you can focus on getting the kill 1-on-1, and then go back to fighting the dude that's down here. Now let's say you're fighting a guy here, and there's also a guy shooting at you from over here. So in this situation, you can't really isolate, because even if you, run over here and get aggressive on this guy, the guy over here is still going to be able to shoot you pretty easily. So in this situation, if you can't isolate, the next thing you want to do is ignore. So you want to pick, again, the weaker player or the player closest to you. So in this case, it would be the dude that's here. And just focus on just killing him, and just ignore the guy over here pretty much. Even if, you're able to get to kill this guy and this guy kills you, it's still a pretty successful 2-on-1. At least you got one out of the two. So yeah, here are a couple examples of ignoring. So that's about it for the aiming portion of the video. So I'll leave you guys now with just a couple clips of me using pretty much all of the aiming techniques that I've talked about. Alright guys, so now I'm going to be talking to you about defense. So defense is really important because the better your defense is, the harder it's going to be for your opponents to kill you. The harder it is for them to kill you, you're going to have a lot more time to shoot them back. And obviously the more time you have to shoot them, the higher your odds of killing them, so you're going to end up racking up a lot more kills. So I can honestly say that having good defense is just as important as having good aim. I mean, you can't really have good aim and still be good at this game if your defense is horrible. So yeah, with that being said, let's get started here with movement. So when I'm playing, a lot of the time people ask me, how do I kill them so fast? I mean, part of it is that I have good aim, but another huge part of it is that their movement just flat out sucks. So I'm going to show you guys how to move properly. So basically, there's 3 different types of movement. So you can strafe back and forth with A and D, or you can jump on the spot or back and forth, and you can crouch. So pretty much the secret to having good movement is just be as random as possible. You want to use a variety of these techniques, jumping, crouching, and strafing, and you want to make your movement as unpredictable as it possibly can be. Because like I said, the more unpredictable it is, the harder it's going to be for your opponent to kill you. Okay guys, so the second and slightly less important of defense is your positioning. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're fighting someone who's over there. Right now, you and him are both in an identical position pretty much. You're both, right across from each other with this thing blocking the lower half of your body. So what you wouldn't want to do in this situation, you wouldn't want to jump up here, because when you're fighting him up here, he's going to be able to see your entire body, whereas you can only see, the top 2/3 of his. So obviously, you're not going to be shooting his feet, or ideally you don't want to be shooting his feet, but you get my point. He's going to be able to see more of you than you can see at him. So this is something that you never want to be. You never want to get yourself into this situation. So instead what you want to do is you would want to stay back here, shoot him, crouch, re-peek, shoot him. This way you're not overexposing yourself. You're, perfectly hidden 100% from his view when you're shooting him. So by crouching here in this scenario, it prevents giving your opponent what I like to call free shots. So between your sniper shots, it takes a couple seconds for you to shoot your next bullet. So between that lag time, or whatever you want to call it, you don't want to just be like strafing around here, because in that time frame, your opponent's going to be able to shoot you, but you're waiting to get your next bullet, so you're not going to be able to return the fire, and he's going to be able to get free shots on you. So when you run out of bullets, in most cases, it's better to just switch weapons as opposed to reloading. Because, when you're in a firefight and you reload in the middle of it, that's going to be an easy, 3 or 4 seconds that you're not going to be able to shoot while you reload. And during that time, your opponent's going to be able to get a lot of free shots onto you. Like I said, you never want to be giving up free shots, okay? You always want to, if you do have to reload, you always want to, just position yourself hidden or in a good spot so you're not going to be able to get shot at. Okay guys, so lastly, if anyone's actually still watching this, I'm going to be talking about how to use your gadgets. So your pen, your grapple. So let's start off here with the pen. So all the same aiming techniques I talked about with your guns also apply when you're shooting your pen. But the one thing you want to keep in mind when you're using the pen is because of its slow travel time, you have to allow for that. So if you're fighting someone like close range, like say here, you're just gonna aim normally. But if you're shooting the pen at someone who's like way over here, you gotta allow for the time and take that into consideration when you're shooting at them, because the pen travels a lot slower than bullets with your gun do. So here's an example of that. Another thing to keep in mind with the pen is that you can actually aim after you shoot. So like after you click your mouse, you can still, determine where it goes. So like this. So lastly here, I'm going to be talking about grappling. So grappling normally is pretty self-explanatory. So the type of grappling I'm going to be talking about is how to switch grapples in midair, which I like to call double grappling. So when you're double grappling and you're switching grapples in midair, what you want to do is you want to press the corresponding strafe key to the direction that you're moving your mouse in. So that'll look like this. So as you can see, by pressing the corresponding strafe key, it's going to steady you out in midair. It's going to allow for you to aim at the grapples a lot easier. And if you don't do it, you're just going to have a lot less control over where you're going. It'll look something like this. So it's still possible to hit grapples like this, even though I just missed both of those. But obviously it's a lot more difficult if you don't, press the corresponding strafe key. So in terms of moving your mouse when you're double grappling, what you're going to want to do, or what I like to do, is I usually line my mouse up horizontally, slightly above the grapple. So when I fall, my mouse is just going to, fall right through the grapple path, and it's sort of like pre-aiming. I'm just going to, wait until it crosses it, and I'm just going to click my mouse. So it'll look something like this. So as you can see, I'm just not really rushing it. I'm just kind of waiting it out for my mouse to fall into the path of the grapple, then just clicking it. And it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it, really. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for watching. If you watched the whole thing, thank you. I love you. Really appreciate that. And yeah, any questions, just hit me up in game, leave me a comment, whatever. And be sure to subscribe so you know when part 2's out. And in part 2, I'm going to be talking about how to P-jump without your grapple, so definitely want to stay tuned for that. Thanks, guys.